once the United States has colonized Mars, how the government of Mars would operate kills other satellites. And it's actually free to the public with hundreds of thousands of UFO-related newspaper clippings.
It's become clear that Congress is interested in UFOs, but they're not really telling us what they're finding. Who are they talking to about it? Why are they scared to talk about it? What's going on? Well, today we talked to someone who's actually been in charge with preparing some of the reports that they've been looking at. Bob Spearing is the head of international investigations for Mufon, the world's largest civilian-led UFO research network. He's been in this for decades. So if you have questions, he's kind of the guy to go to. You might have seen him on the History Channel. He's made himself familiar on the internet. He's not scared to talk about this. And I will warn you, some of the things that he has to say might not help you sleep at night. But it's a real conversation. It's happening in the halls of our own Congress. So we're not afraid to talk about it either. Welcome to the Austin and Matt podcast.
So Ancient Aliens, Prometheus Productions came to us probably in 2022, late 22, and they wanted to know if we'd be interested in them having us do an entire episode on Mufon with them. And we said, sure. And they were looking for really good cases. And so I'm the director of international investigations of the Mufon. Basically, I handle all of the field investigators and all of the cases outside the United States, but I'm very fluent with our database. It has 140,000 cases. And every year at our symposium, which would be in Cincinnati this year in July, I present the top cases of interest from that 140,000 that happened in the past year. So when Prometheus reached out to us, our media director, Ron James, who made the movie Accidental Truth, okay, he said, Bob, you know any good cases? I said, sure. And they set me up with the producer of Ancient Aliens, and I gave him this case in Pennsylvania where a woman sees a bright light come down on her farm, and she has a pond in the backyard. And this is about 7 miles away from the Susquehanna nuclear plant. We know that UFOs like nuclear plants. And she sees the light come down, the dogs go crazy, and then everything outside in the middle of the summer in Pennsylvania, which is just full of crickets and, tree frogs chirping, silence. That's called the Oz effect. So you almost feel like you're in a bubble. A lot of people who have UFO encounters, they experience this Oz effect. So the next day, husband goes out and they find that there's this, basically it's like a crop circle. It's about 2 feet, two yards in diameter, and it had 3 circle indentations in it. And what they believe is something came down in the yard. Maybe it needed to do some sort of repairs and then took off again. And we ended up doing some radiation testing and soil sampling, and they found some unusual qualities in the soil. There was some heavy metals in it. And basically when the investigator went out, he broke out in a rash, and we were worried that he got radiation sickness or something. And what the deal was is that in a lot of UFO incidents, they have an electromagnetic field around them. This is why people's car headlights dim, that kind of thing. And when you have heavy metals and a residual electromagnetic field, it can cause a toxic reaction in animals and humans. And that's what happened to this guy. He broke out in blisters all over his body. So I tell the guy from Prometheus this, and he goes, this is a great case. Da, da, da. The next thing I know, they have me meeting Travis Taylor and Nick Pope at a cafe at 7 o'clock in the morning with the field investigator who broke out in the rash. And we filmed a segment of this episode on Mufon. And I thought I was only going to be in it for like 2 minutes. And it was the main segment of the episode. So I got like 10 minutes worth of screen time on Ancient Aliens. So I was very happy about that. And pretty much I do a lot of, man. Yeah, that's a cool story. And it's amazing how they do the show. Okay. It's like they film you pulling up. They film you driving away. They do it again. They bring the drone in. They want an aerial shot of you pulling into the cafe, and then they there's a certain point where they call it nodding, and they take shots of you going, oh, and it took. And then we go out from the cafe. We all meet at the cafe, and then we go out to the farm, and we meet the family, and then the whole thing takes place. And for almost 12 hours we were there, and it turned into a 10-minute segment. It's
Wow.
it's amazing how they put it all together. It's crazy.
When they ask you to do the nodding, do you have to be listening to something interesting that makes you nod, or do you just sit and start nodding?
You just sit and start nodding.
Okay.
And they'll put the camera on me, and I'll be like, and they'll say, "Put your chin up," and then they'll do Nick Pope, and then they'll do Travis, and Travis Taylor. Um, that guy's just full of stories. He is a brilliant guy.
And
Some of the
would
stuff
you
he tells is scary.
and would you, just for people who may not know, will you give an overview of what Mufon is? And then also, I'd love to know how you got into Mufon.
Okay. The Mutual UFO Network has been doing the Air Force's business since 1969. That's our slogan. It started at the Midwest UFO Network that came out of APRO, Carell and Jim Lorenzen's Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, which was a big UFO organization in the 60s and 70s, like NICAP, Donald Kehoe and NICAP. And Mufon was the one that came out surviving. There was also Kufos, that was Hynek's group. That's still around, but they just archive things.
I don't think I know any of the names you just mentioned.
Yeah, what time period were all of these like competing and coming into existence and out of existence?
50s till the 70s.
50s to the 70s. Okay, you had
Yep.
like 3 organizations pop
Or
up.
emerging.
You had NICAP, APRO, Kufos, and Mufon. All right.
And these are all supposed to be civilian networks. That's the idea.
They were all civilian groups, yeah. And Mufon's the only one left. We have 7,000 members. And what's unique about us, we have these other groups had databases, and those databases still exist. But we have 140,000 cases in ours. The difference between us and all of these other organizations is that we investigate. So we actually have about 700 field investigators. They take a course, and basically a lot of people who are interested in this kind of stuff have some sort of forensic background: cops, retired FBI, airline pilots, botanists, geologists. They usually have some sort of skin in the game, and they have an interest in UFOs, because you can't go to school to learn about UFOs. There's no really credible degree you can get. So,
And is this a volunteer network, or is there
yeah, it's volunteer. They don't pay anybody except
cool.
the executive director. Yeah, everybody's volunteer, and that's been its strength, and it also, is its weakness too, in a sort of way, because a lot of people come and go. All right,
Sure.
when you have volunteers. So anyway, if you take this test and you pass it, you have to be a member. Membership start as cheap as $6 a month, and you get a monthly magazine and a twice monthly newsletter.
Cool.
But if you pass, they start dishing out cases to you. We have state directors in the United States. We have national directors outside the United States, and we have field investigators, mostly in Canada, England, the United States, Australia, and France. But we have people in Asia and Africa also. And if the case is in your region, it gets sent to you, and it'll have a narrative. And sometimes there's photographs, and sometimes there's video or drawings. And we actually have a photo analysis team. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark D'Antonio, who's been on plenty of television shows. That's a guy worth interviewing, Mark D'Antonio.
Cool.
And we also have a lab in Missouri, and we have a lab in Australia. So when we get traced evidence, if the field investigator gets it, we have chain of custody forms, and then we, send it out to the lab to be analyzed. We had some interesting stuff last year I can talk about later if you want.
So will I be accurate in saying that Mufon is a large group of people who are passionate about extraterrestrial activity, and by joining Mufon, you actually get deal flow in your area as for things to go investigate? And
I guess so, yeah. Yep.
Hey, here's a crazy thing that just popped up right near you. Go on and check it out, and go. And it sort of lets people who are interested in at least contributing in some way kind of get connected in to a network that lets them know about things in their area if they don't know or already know.
Yes, and if you live in a state that's a hot spot, they don't even have enough people to cover all the cases. Like if you
What are the hot spot states?
Washington State is probably number one. Right close behind it is California, and I think that a lot of that's got to do with the Pacific Ocean and all of the military bases on the West Coast. And then you have Pennsylvania, you have Arizona, New York. Where I live in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, we get a ton ton of cases, and we actually had some peripheral drone activity a couple of weeks ago when the drone thing was going on. But yeah, basically, yeah, we have memberships. We have members that like to investigate cases, and we're pretty well known.
And how did you get into it? What's your story? How did you find MUFON?
It's a long story. I'm 65 years old, but back on November 9th, 1965, I was 6, and we had the Great Northeastern Blackout, and the whole East Coast from Quebec down to Virginia just was, we lived in Jersey City, and we could see the New York skyline out our apartment window, and it was just a dark silhouette of the skyline. It was crazy. Next day, my uncle comes over saying they saw UFOs over the Clay Power Station at Niagara Falls, and they believe that's what took out the power station. And as today we know that there were 7 UFO reports that night, including from pilots that saw stuff near that power station. I'm hooked. I stopped buying the UFO magazines, the Gold Key comic books, Saga magazine in the 70s. Chariots of the Gods came out when I was in 5th grade, and I was off and running. In '86, I was camping up in Round Valley Reservoir in New Jersey, very remote part of New Jersey. Some people say it's a haunted lake, and I'm sitting on an overturned canoe on the beach one night, drinking beer with my buddy. We got ponchos on. It's just the cloud cover's really low, and we're looking out at the lake, and we just see this pink star coming at us very slowly. We're going, can't be a star because it's under the cloud cover, and all of a sudden it just drops, does a semicircle. All right. We look at each other and go, holy, what was that? Years later, I find out that it's a phenomenon called the orange orb phenomenon. It's different than, say, paranormal 7 orbs. There's something to it physically. And a guy wrote a book on it. This guy, Terry Ray, who was a Pennsylvania MUFON field investigator. It was called The Complete Story of the Worldwide Invasion of Orange Orbs. I went, my God, other people have seen this thing that I saw. Little did I realize people have been seeing orbs for thousands of years. I have a collection of newspaper articles that span 3 centuries of people seeing orbs, and there's 3 theories about orbs. One is that it may be some sort of natural phenomenon like ball lightning. Other people think that it's possibly some sort of intelligence or a life form endemic to Earth that's plasma based that we don't understand yet. And if you know who what's his name, Rowe, I think is the NARDCAP, they investigate near collisions of planes with the Ted Rowe with objects in the air. He believes that these are craft, spherical craft enveloped in a plasma. Why? Because plasma absorbs radar signals. So sometimes they'll be right outside of a plane pacing it, and the pilot will look at his TCAS anti-collision radar, and there's nothing on the radar, even though there's something just driving alongside of them at 35,000 feet. So there's 3 theories about what orbs are. Anyway, that's about 2013. I go to a convention just to meet this guy, to talk to him, to tell him my story. And he tells me, you should join MUFON. You've got that forensic back. And I joined MUFON, and I started as a field investigator. My background is in, I was a rail traffic controller. I was a locomotive engineer. I was a safety investigator. And I had pretty much the background to do it. I also took film production and journalism at Fordham University when I went to college. So because I had all this transportation facility management experience, I moved up pretty quickly in MUFON. And now I'm the director of international investigations. We have like 4 functional directors, an executive director, and then a board of directors. And that's the function, the hierarchy of MUFON, and everybody else is state directors and field investigators.
Does Fordham University count you as one of their star alumni, given the amount of star time that you've had now? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I'm really not tight with Fordham. I'm more tight with my high school, St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City. And pretty much all my grammar school friends like that I haven't seen in 30 years. I'll get a text from somebody in Alaska going, I just saw you on Ancient Aliens. All right. So it goes to show you a lot of people watch UFO programs.
Yeah.
Have you been around, or what's the What's the tea on all the Jersey drones going on right now, or were going on? What's happening with those since it's kind of near you?
There's a lot of theories. I mean, they were coming out, one a week. The first one was that when this was going on, there was a shipment of medical radiological material that was robbed from a truck in New Jersey. And so the first theory was that these might be what you call nest drones. They're operated by the Department of Energy. They're called Nuclear Emergency Situation Team drones, something like that. And if you ever saw the movie with Clooney and Nicole Kidman, I think it was called Peacemaker 20 years ago.
Mhm.
The helicopters, they're looking for that dirty bomb, and it's got these like scopes and monitors looking for radiation signatures on the ground. That was the first one. The second one was that it was Iranians or Chinese launching these things from submarines or motherships out in the Atlantic, because a lot of people see them come in from the ocean in the Toms River, Wildwood, New Jersey area near Fort Dix, McGuire Fort Dix. So that was the other theory. Uh, that guy Schellenberger, who did the last congressional hearings, he actually called me and he wanted to know if I thought they might be what you call mimic drones that aren't actually drones, but some sort of extraterrestrial presence masking itself. And I told him I don't know about that, but that's a theory. And then there was also there was legislation up where they wanted to give the FAA more power over drones uh, in the airspace of the United States, and that maybe this was a ploy to actually make people get scared, so that it would be easier to pass this bill that would actually restrict airspace even more. So I mean, there's a bunch of theories, but then the orbs started showing up, and that's when my ears perked up. I says, well, it's not only drones now, it's orbs. And these drones, and I saw one, we had one here that week everything was peaking. There was a rather large object up here in the Poconos, and it had the red and green, FAA positioning lights, but they were extremely bright and they were blinking. And I never saw that before in my entire life. So I thought that whatever this thing was that I was watching in the sky had some sort of unusual qualities about it. So, I don't know. The orbs, I told you, they could be plasma-based, plasma enveloped craft. And if that's the case, that's pretty scary, because we're only developing that technology now. The Chinese Air Force and the United States Air Force are independently playing with shooting plasma fields in front of like F-35. So if they were going into Iran to take out a, target, and Iran's got a radar and a missile, ground to air missile waiting to take out the F-35, the radar won't see it. But we don't have the ability yet to envelop the entire F-35 fighter jet. But somebody apparently knows that technology now, and they've known it for quite some time.
Whoa. So the plasma, you're saying it's kind of like the F-117, where it's like really, it's better though. It's an advanced version of radar, like muffling, basically, where you capture the radar waves and you don't let them bounce back. You're saying the plasma can sort of capture the waves and then it won't bounce back.
Right.
It's the radar dishes.
Right. So yeah, the F-117, it's the paint and it's the angles to make it have a very small signature, whereas the plasma basically eliminates the signature altogether. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you follow Chris Bledsoe at all? And have you read his book around and all the orbs that fly around him? Does he ring a bell?
No, 4 weeks ago, when New Paradigm, Danny Sheehan, they had a big panel on the drones. I was part of it with Richard Dolan, Danny Sheehan, and Chris Bledsoe, and that was actually the first time I actually spoke to him. A very sincere guy, like sort of like a woodsman-y type guy. All right. But I was amazed that this guy had so many encounters in his life. It's astonishing. But I really hadn't followed him till that day.
I just saw, or I read his book. It came out a few months ago. It's called what what is it? UFO from God, UFO of God, and he's been seeing them his whole life. Basically, they follow him around actually wherever he travels. It's wild.
And he seems to think that it's a spiritual phenomenon. Is that common among orbs, where people that seem to be delving into the spiritual, they have more encounters, or is that just Chris?
I'd have to say that there's legitimacy to to that thought. A lot of people who submit reports to Mufon are predisposed to seeing UFOs. A lot of experiencers believe that it's something, you know, ethereal. It's not necessarily something on our plane of existence. So, you know, I definitely think that there's credence to that. A lot of times, though, when people take pictures of orbs in cemetery, all right, at night, they're really not orbs. It's our photo analysis team will tell you that it's the camera lens focused to infinity and a dark night, and it's really just a dust speck floating in front of the camera that's blown up and out of focus. So it's not even, you know, real. But I absolutely believe orbs are real because I've seen them. All right. So, you know, how can I deny that they don't exist? But to answer the question, yeah, a lot of people who report things to us, they do have a spiritual slant, and they don't necessarily think it's aliens. As a matter of fact, MUFON will never tell you, yeah, it's aliens or it's time travelers or it's interdimensionals or it's demonic. All right, we won't ever go out on that limb. We just investigate and put the conclusions into the database for other researchers. Yes, so we don't call ourselves the Mutual Alien Network, you know, because the UFO pretty much covers everything and anything.
It seems like it's picking up a lot, and I say this from personal experiences. I'll share a couple later on, but is that right? Does it feel like all activity is just picking up recently, kind of
Um,
around the world?
yeah, I've been doing this a long time, so I'll tell you, you got to be careful about that because when people see drones, then everybody in the world sees drones. Okay, and some of it's hysteria, and the other part, we have to be careful, and this is the practical side of things. For many years, MUFON was the only active database. So you would get accurate monthly statistics. Was there more sightings in Washington State? Was there less in Pennsylvania? And you can't do that anymore because there's so many new groups popping up, like Arrow. NASA takes reports. There's the pilot group that takes reports, and now there's that private corporation called Enigma Labs that take reports. So none of these agencies, including MUFON, talk to each other. All right. So you can't really get accurate statistics anymore. You never will again. It's too bifurcated to different places. So
Is the reason that you have like a $6 sign up fee for the MUFON network, is it kind of like the same reason that Elon added this checkbox so that he could get rid of bots, basically? Is it just to sort of like say,
no,
hey, if you're serious about reporting something, pay a little bit of money so that it's not just random
no.
spam from the internet? Okay.
You can report a UFO report to MUFON.com for free. There's no cost. You just click report a UFO and it takes you through the form. And then we'll contact that witness and talk to them. If it's depending on what category case it is, we'll go out, take samples if there's some sort of like trace evidence. So that's free. Anybody in the world can report to MUFON. We don't charge them anything. If you want to be a member, all right, that's how we support ourselves, okay? Because we have to have office space. We just, over the past decade or so, we scanned over 2 terabytes of historical documents so that we could put them up on the internet. All of that costs money. You have to, you know, you have to have a girl at the office pretty much mailing out a, you know, a MUFON hat if somebody wants, you know, or you know, a Christmas tree ornament that says MUFON. That's how we support ourselves. So for $6, you get the electronic version of the magazine. You get, if you pay a little more, you can get the paper magazine. I'll show you right here. This is what the paper magazine looks like. Very,
Right.
very well done publication. All right, very sharp, and you also get access to the social network. We have an internal social network with about 2,500 of our members that talk to each other like on a Facebook type platform. Uh, and of course, we have the symposium every year in Cincinnati, and we have, you know, top level speakers. I wish I could tell you who we have this year in July, but I'm not allowed to yet. But we got like
Okay.
3 really, really big names.
Oh, that's awesome. Have you considered creating a dating network amongst UFO believers?
You know, that's a really interesting idea. I know I did not think of that, but that's very, very interesting idea.
I have this theory that if you could match people based on their biggest conspiracy theory that they believe in, then you would probably get good matches.
Hmm.
Maybe we can look into
Hmm.
that.
Hmm. That's a good idea. I like that one.
Have you ever concocted like a greatest hits, like Mufon, greatest investigations, like photos, stories, things like that? I would love to link to something that was kind of like top 5 or top 10 cases.
I do the presentation every year at the convention, at the symposium, the best 5 cases of the year. And I already have several of them. I'm the guy that goes through. We get about 5,000 cases a year. All right. I'm the guy that goes through all 5,000 cases, looking for the like 5 or 10 best, and then I present it on stage at the symposium. Um, so the only place you'd actually find something like that would be in our digital library. We have like Mufon Television. That's one of our side products. It's like an enhanced membership. And we have like 800 programs, and we record all of the symposiums. So you can go back 10 years and look at who was speaking about what. And you see every year we do the top cases of the year
I'm
that way.
guessing I'm guessing you don't want to leak any spoilers about the best cases from this year. Can we hear about last year's best case?
Yeah, let me think. Let me tell you, one of the cases we've got this year, I just approved it. Somebody took a really, really, really excellent video of a black triangle. All right. And I mean, it's stunning. And we're actually going to have our photo analysis team come up on stage and describe, how they figured out, and clarified it and used contrast to bring it out. We take a scientific approach to that. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think one last year, but the best case we ever had, it actually made it to that The Proof Is Out There television show, was basically when I was talking to you before about the Orbs. There was a FedEx plane going from Mexico City to Tennessee, presumably carrying auto parts, Ford auto parts. And the pilot, his name was Eric Delgado, and he had been a C-117 uh, military pilot over Iraq, and he had been flying for 25 years for FedEx. His co-pilot was a former F-15 fighter jet pilot. And all of a sudden, this object comes down on the co-pilot side and starts accompanying them for 33 minutes at 500 miles per hour at like 35,000 feet. And this pilot had the wherewithal to shut off the cockpit lights. Most people say, I was so stunned by what I saw, I forgot to pull out my camera. Okay. This guy pulled out his camera, turned off the cockpit lights, started filming the thing out the window, and then panned it down to his anti-collision radar screen, which showed there was nothing on the screen, but it was clearly 10 feet away from the plane, outside the plane. And the interesting thing was, when it reached, if it had been ball lightning, a natural phenomenon, it probably would have struck the lightning rod on the plane and just dissipated. All right. This thing accompanied it. Okay. And when it reached the United States border at Matamoros, Mexico, it made an abrupt left turn, turn purple, which usually is a sign of the propulsion system in some UFOs, and would not cross the United States border. So the question was, if it was sophisticated enough not to be visible on the TCAS anti-collision radar, did the United States government have something more sophisticated that would have been able to identify it? And that's why it made the left turn. And the second question that we always ask is, what was really of interest about the FedEx plane if it was only carrying auto parts? So
Yeah, and why were there such sophisticated? I know I live in Mexico. I know that auto parts is like the biggest export of Mexico. I've had a lot of friends working that, but I can't imagine ex F-15 fighter pilots flying cargo planes for auto parts. That doesn't make sense.
well,
Now,
when they retire, these pilots in the military, they got to go get a job somewhere. So they
yeah,
usually go, work for FedEx or something.
that's fair. No, I've heard tell that amongst the anti-gravity, I guess things that are flying around, some people can already detect if it's US, if it's Russia, and
Mhm.
I've heard that they're the two predominant leaders in anti-gravity tech right now. I'm not sure, but I wonder if it would be like a Russian spy drone or spy thing.
Well, I'll tell you a couple of stories. All right. Um, Remember the guy that blew himself up in the Tesla in front of Trump Tower
Yeah,
like 2 weeks ago? That's
yeah.
another interesting story that's connected to the drones. All right. Because right before he blew himself up, and there's some people in Mufon that don't think it was him that blew up, that he made it to Mexico. Um, he sent like a manifesto to a podcaster, and essentially what he said was these drones that people are seeing are anti-gravitic drones, and that the only two countries in the world that possess this technology is the United States and China. All right.
Mm.
And he was trying to expose it. And I'll tell you a connecting story. The new like F-117 fighter jet, the Raider, it's called. Okay, its maiden flight was in October. We had been getting people drawing what looked like uh so like that with like two cockpit windows, triangle. And what we believe these people were drawing were these Raiders before they were officially flying. All right, so people were seeing them being tested, and they described them as white. When the Air Force came out and published its first picture of the Raider, it was white. So we sort of know that these UFO witnesses were actually seeing secret American craft being tested. But the interesting thing about that was that all of the witnesses said the same thing, that it was silently hovering. All right. So a VTOL, a vertical takeoff and landing craft, like a Harrier jet, that makes a lot of noise because it's got these thrusters. All right. So unless you're dampening that somehow, and the design shows nothing of the sort on the bottom of these Raiders, were they using some sort of anti-gravity technology to hover in place, like the supposed drones that this guy was talking about? I absolutely believe that if not the United States, some government on Earth possesses anti-gravity technology for
Do
sure.
you how does that how do we think that's possible? Like, in my mind, it feels like our theoretical physicists don't even still know what gravity is. So how do you have a piece of technology that has anti-gravity? You know, if at least the smartest people we know of from the smartest universities that are theoretical physicists can't even think of how to do it yet, how do we actually have physical things that can do it?
Oh, I think we have people that have figured out how to do it. Eric Davis, the physicist, he's a big UFO buff. I mean, he can explain to you how you can go from one end of the universe to the other if you have the right technology. Mikio Kushio, the Japanese guy, he said we're 5 years. We have the technology on paper that within 5 years we'll be able to execute time travel, and I believe that's
Oh.
true. Also, in the 1990s, there was a NASA scientist. He's deceased now, and he was working on anti-gravity technology. And basically, the problem was they had to find anti-gravitons. All right, we know gravitons exist. The only thing stopping us was discovering the anti-graviton. And who's to say what they're doing at DARPA and Area 51? But
Yeah.
the stuff they got there is 50 years ahead of what we know. So I think that they've probably solved that problem already.
Well, and I think you don't have to know how something works to use it, right? Like I don't know how my computer works, but I use it all the time. I
Mhm.
think if you were to ever even witness something doing anti-gravity, you could start tinkering until you figure it out. I think that's kind of
Mhm.
how humans have advanced.
Well,
Mhm.
Period.
only if the creator of that tech did know what it was doing. So they either found an alien craft that has anti-gravity and basically learned how to use it, but they don't know how it works. Or like we may not know how to use our computers, but the person who made it and designed it, the engineer who did it at
Mhm.
Apple should know how the switches and everything. You know, I think
Yeah, they
knowledge
should
is
have a better
contagious.
model in their head. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
but I mean, you could discover and use fire before you understand how fire works. Y- That could just happen. If this is a fundamental force of gravity, we could align some voltage charges up in some way, see some repellent activity, and go, "Well, it works." Like, who knows the math that's the
Yep.
correct model for it, but it does work.
Mhm.
I
That's
don't know. That's how I see it.
I'd
Um,
love to know. I'd love to know, wouldn't we all, how gravity works?
well, there's a long history of anti-gravity patents and whatnot going back, isn't there, Bob?
Yeah, but they believe that they were experimenting with it as far back as World War II. All right. Um, and I also believe that we definitely possess uh crash retrievals. As a matter of fact, we're working on a case now where in 1968, 1969, they may have had a crash retrieval at Norton Air Force Base in California, and that they were trying to communicate with it. I can't tell you how because we're going to present that. at the symposium. But Leonard Stringfield, if you're familiar with Leonard Stringfield, he was probably oh, you gotta look him up. Leonard
Okay.
Stringfield. They're gonna be making a movie on him. He's probably the most famous undersung UFO researcher of all time. He operated from the 1950s, well, I think 1994 when he died, but he had CIA sources, he had NSA sources, NASA sources, FBI sources, uh, and he kept diaries. And his diaries went 30 years from the 70s till his death. And they total 65 diaries, 200 pages each, about 12,000 pages. All right. And this guy wrote down everything. And Mufon got the diaries. And I'm the head of the team. We have to redact them before we can release them to the public. So we've released 5 so far. It's just like a part of a subscription to our digital library, and that's just one thing that you can get.
What
But
do you redact out of them?
what do I what?
What's being redacted out of them?
I'll give you an example. The names of the CIA bureau chiefs that he worked with. All right. As a matter of fact, one of them, I redacted it myself. We have this redacting software. The diary says this particular bureau chief said to Len Stringfield, Len, if you release this information that I gave you, they'll know it's me. And if they're not afraid to kill Kennedy, they're not afraid to kill a CIA bureau chief. So that's why we have to redact a lot of the names out of this. There were people who were actually double agents.
Is he
that-
still alive? I guess some of the agents are still. All the names are.
Yeah, some people could still be alive. Yes, so that's why we're very, very careful and we're redacting them very, very slowly. But they're fascinating. He was the crash retrieval guy, and after he wrote 2 books. His most famous book is called Situation Red, which came out in '78, and then he did 7 pretty much studies, smaller, thinner studies on crash retrievals, and he pretty much lists the most prominent ones where they actually may have the material. If you know anything about Roswell, you'll know that right after Roswell, all of a sudden Kevlar was invented, solid state circuitry was invented, and possibly they were just reverse engineering everything that they got out of that craft.
Oh yeah, and post-it notes.
Yeah, and Tang, right? That the astronauts drank, right?
Right. That's right. Why? I think I'm trying to. I have another question about this redaction thing because MUFON isn't really a government agency, and so why redact anything? Why not? Because it's sort of like, who are we saving, or what's the purpose of that?
But well, with our database, when a witness reports something to us, they are completely anonymous. Nobody will ever know their name unless, like, say, if a production company says that's a great case, can we talk to the witness? We'll reach out to the witness, say, do you want to talk to the production company? And they'll either say yes or no. But also, let's say you have, you're the daughter of a CIA bureau chief, and the CIA bureau chief told Len Stringfield, hey, I've got these photographs from this hangar at the Air Force Base that showed dead aliens. We don't want, the FBI showing up at the daughter's house, pounding on the door, grabbing a photograph. So there's numerous reasons why we have to redact things.
Saving your sources, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. All right, fair enough.
So I think it was Matthew Livelsberger who was the guy who blew up the Tesla truck. So he
Yes, he had his long name,
he was trying to say that these are Chinese spy drones, I guess, and they're just
Chinese and American anti-gravity drones,
and they're flying around. They were flying them over our country just to kind of say like, "F you." Like we have superior tech. That's just what it is. You need to know this. Do you remember the story from, I think it was like 1952, the UFOs over the White House?
Yes.
Was
Yeah.
that similar? What group would that have been?
Well, that happened over a 2-week period. What you have to understand about 1952, all right, was there was a wave that year, and a lot of these UFOs were seen over SAC bases, Strategic Air Command bases, where nukes were housed. All right. The other thing is that was interesting, and I wrote an article for Outer Limits magazine in England on this. They were following Eisenhower. Every place that Eisenhower went, and he wasn't president at the time, UFOs were showing up. All right. That summer, they show up over the White House and over the Capitol. All right, over a 2 week period, and we couldn't catch them with our best jets. All right. That's the year that the United States. That's the year that Britain tested its first atomic bomb, and that's the year that the United States tested its first thermonuclear hydrogen bomb. All right, and that's also the year that Eisenhower became president. So there's a correlation between Eisenhower, nukes, and Washington. And I absolutely believe somebody was sending us a message that, hey, we don't want you building these bombs, and we know who your president's going to be. Scary.
Oh, wow. We know who your president's going to be. So maybe they would either be very good at intuiting, or they might be able to jump through space-time a little bit.
That's what time travel is one of my favorite theories about what's going on. I've done a lot of research throughout history. There are definite examples of time manipulation where I actually believe that somebody's actually trying to drive or design our timeline to go a certain way. All right.
Can you give, like,
I'll give you the best. I'll give you a banger example.
Yeah.
Okay. In 570 AD, the king of Yemen had converted to Christianity, and he wanted the Meccans, which is now in Saudi Arabia, he wanted them to convert to Christianity. At the time, the Meccans were pagans, all right? And they told him to go screw. And so he says, okay, I'm going to raise Mecca to the ground, and the Kaaba, where the meteorite that they keep in the black boxes, goes, I'm going to wipe it out. So he shows up with his elephants and his sophisticated state-of-the-art army for 570 AD, and this ragtag bunch of Meccans come out that are going to get slaughtered. And all of a sudden, the Quran talks about the miracle of the elephant. And essentially, these big black birds come out of nowhere, drop pebbles from their mouths on the Yemeni army, and completely obliterate it. And in Islamic commentaries, it says that the Yemeni soldiers' skin slid off their bodies. Okay. Look at that story through technological eyes. Was it birds with pebbles, or was it
Radiation.
modern 20 or 21st century fighter jets dropping radioactive cluster bombs? What happened in 570 AD a couple of months later?
I have no idea.
Muhammad was born in Mecca.
Right.
I feel somebody came from the future to ensure that he would be born.
Whoa.
Well,
do you believe in free will?
I do.
You do. Okay.
Maybe just with
I
some
can't
time
I can't reconcile everything. Yeah, I just want. I've been watching. What was the movie last week with Ethan Hawke? Predestination. It's a time travel movie.
Yeah.
That's a weird movie. All right, where he's basically the boy and the girl and the mother of themselves. If you can figure that one out.
Wait. So let me get this straight. You're saying it's possible. I mean, maybe we don't know. We can't even assign probabilities, but it's at least somewhat possible that
Non-zero.
maybe the U.S. Air Force went back in time and created
Absolutely,
Islam.
I absolutely believe or allowed it to happen. All right,
or allowed it to. Yeah, they cleared someone else out of the way.
Right, or maybe it was the Chinese Air Force, ensuring
right.
that it gets done. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more. I don't have it where I could pop it up for you right now. But are you familiar with Nuremberg, 1561, the sky battle over Germany, Nuremberg? Did you ever see that picture?
A little bit. There's a painting of it, isn't there?
It's a painting. Yeah. You
Yeah.
know what? Let me try to pull it up because I want to show you something. If you give me a second here.
Yeah, this is a really interesting painting. I would love to. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Let's see if I can pull this up. Okay, good. Let me go back to you guys. Let me share screen. There it is. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yep.
All right, this happened in April of 1561 over Nuremberg, Germany. And debunkers will try to say that this was just sun dogs, mock suns, from ice crystals in the atmosphere. It was a static natural phenomenon. Okay. And what happened over the city is these balls that were black and blue, and some glowed orange like orbs. They're coming out of these tubes in the sky. All right. There's also these crosses. And if you look, there's two different types of tubes. There's tubes that look like they have portholes with the orbs coming out of them. And then look up to the upper right-hand corner. You'll see that there's another type of cylinder with no windows that seems to have a flap with
Yeah.
these
Yep.
things coming out of them. Okay. So picture MiG fighter jets going against F-35s. All right. Chinese versus or Russian versus American. It seems that this is similar technology and they're fighting each other. All right. And using orbs. And the orbs basically at the end of the sky battle fall to the ground and dissolve. But look to the lower right-hand corner and you'll see the smoke billowing. Okay. I don't know how big it is on your screen. It's pretty big on
Yeah.
mine. But if you can zoom in there, it's one of those tubes. One of those tubes has crashed, and it looks like there's orbs like executing
yeah.
a rescue mission, right? But the most curious thing about the whole photograph is what happened several hours later in a condensed time. Is that later on in the day after this battle in the sky, this big black spear comes flying by. All right. So look at the bottom. All right. When you take the ratio of the front wings and the back wings, there is very similar to experimental NASA aircraft from the 1950s. All right. The cuts in the triangle. I've spoken to two fighter jet pilots, and they believe it was the landing flaps, and that this thing was actually coming in for landing. What's peculiar is that if it's got front wings and rear wings, it's designed totally to fly in an atmosphere like Earth's, exactly, using lift. This thing didn't come from Alpha Centauri. This thing was manufactured on Earth, and it's probably some sort of fighter jet. So that's the second best example I have that somebody's flying around with a jet in the past that won't be invented for 500 years.
I
That's-
rarely ever let my mind go to the possibility that they're time traveling and our own history is being tinkered with. But when you do go down that road, you start to see why they would want to cover it up. Or it's a plausible explanation for like, oh yeah, of course we wouldn't want to tell people. We're messing with your past.
Yeah, absolutely. And every time I live like in a pretty rural area. Every time at like 10 o'clock at night, I see a car stop in front of my house on the road and then drive away. I get like a little worried, you know?
Yeah, I could see that.
Are you ever worried about disinformation? It seems like organizations like the CIA, or if there is any truth or validity to the government's U.S. government having any of this tech, then they would want to actually start planting, stories all over the place. MUFON would be a great spot for it to, I don't know, just sow confusion and all
Dead ends.
Yeah.
Send people on.
Yeah, amazingly, we don't get a lot of, I mean, we get people, sending us a report with like pornography in it sometimes, all right? But we don't get any, disinformation type stuff. Where you do see the disinformation type stuff, and which I'm very, very suspicious of, is at these congressional hearings, all right?
Oh,
Do you remember David Grush, the
Yeah.
whistleblower? Okay, all right. If that guy was really rogue, all right, they would have put a bullet in his head like before he even got to the congressional hearings. All right. And he talks about some really, really interesting stuff. And after the hearings, all right, first he talked about uh, off-world crash retrievals and non-human biologics. All right. That guy's an intelligence officer. So he's got everyone in Congress going, whoa. All right. He's got everybody watching on TV going, whoa. All right. Think about it. Let's say again we're dealing with time travelers, or let's say the United States has a secret base on the moon and we're already manufacturing stuff on the moon. All right. Using materials from the moon because we're going to be mining the moon soon. All right. So off-world craft could be United States craft, but just not built on Earth. Maybe they built them out in space. Non-human biologics. Maybe that's just the broccoli lunch pouch from an astronaut. All right. He could be, blowing perfume smoke up or what. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's the delivery. It's all in the delivery.
Well,
So,
where are you at on genetic testing by the governments? Because I mean, I just have this like base understanding that the government, it's hard to say the government. The government's like a multi-headed beast in my mind, but there's probably groups that have a lot of funding that are charged with doing genetic experimentation to see if they can make super soldiers or whatnot. So
Mhm.
I would guess if you're a military guy, you've got to say, well, my job is to defend my country against any possible danger. And as soon as
Mhm.
you learn about like CRISPR-9 or whatever, and you know that we can, breed glow in the dark dogs like that guy in North Carolina
Yeah,
did,
yeah.
you have to say, well, I know that I know that China has to be testing with super soldiers and trying to make your skin really resistant and this and that. Wouldn't it seem likely they would have started on that probably like 50 or 60 years ago, as soon as we figured out what the human genome was?
Yeah,
And then,
I can't exactly tell you because we're going to present it at the symposium, but yeah, they were doing that in 1968, and we found that in Stringfield's diaries also.
Whoa.
okay, that's a good teaser.
Stringfield's diaries are the mother lode. It's 12,000 pages of like wacky, deep, government stuff. So,
So if we
we
become members of the network, we get access to the full diaries,
but redacted, no names.
but even the members have redacted versions. Okay.
Yeah, so this is the way it works with the Stringfield diaries. Um, 25 years ago, Mufon began just scanning stuff, scanning documents from the Blue
Sweet.
Book. Um, we actually have we took all 13,000 drawings from the 140,000 witness reports and turned it into a drawing gallery. And it's amazing the similarities of things that people draw. You'll see the same drawings over and over again. It's bizarre. We have the newspaper collection that's actually free to the public with hundreds of thousands of UFO related newspaper clippings. We have every single MUFON magazine from 1967 up until this month. We have all of the preceding books from the symposiums since the 1970s. So if you wanted to know what Stanton Friedman was talking about in 1998 at a MUFON symposium, we got the topic there. All right. And we have private collections of other authors. We have hundreds and hundreds of MJ12 documents. All right.
What's MJ12?
Majestic 12, the secret group of American military and scientists that were secretly investigating UFOs. There's doubt whether it was real or whether it was a hoax, but a very well done hoax. But we have tons and tons of documents, and we also now are releasing once a month the Stringfield Diaries, and we've released the first 5 so far. So you can either get that with the enhanced membership package at MUFON, or you can buy it as a standalone $50 a year membership card. So you don't have to be a MUFON member to get access to the library. It's over 2 terabytes of information, and we still have another terabyte to upload. But it's just fascinating. And if you want to check it out, go to projectaquarius.mufon.com and just go to the free newspaper clippings rooms, and you'll be amazed at how much
Are these
stuff is in
are these diaries handwritten or typed?
typed.
Whoa, so they could be scanned and fed into like a large language model or something like that?
They could. Yes, the PDFs.
So we could create a bot that has the memory of all of those diaries that you could chat with, actually, like a chat with the diary type.
MUFON has a contractor right now where they're developing something like that right now.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
yeah, hopefully
Great.
that'll be shortcoming. One of the things that I'd like to see is in this drawings gallery, people draw 3 things. They draw entities like grays, reptilians, tall, blonde Nordics. They draw craft. Uh, you'd be amazed at the different types of craft that people draw. And then they draw symbols, hieroglyphics that they see appear on their wall or were given to them in their head by the aliens. Did you ever see like Rendlesham there with the hieroglyphics possibly on the side of the triangle shaped craft that landed? Springfield's diaries, by the way, we just saw this last week. They have a version of the Rendlesham story where there were actually 3 entities hovering in a beam of light, making repairs to that ship. That's something that the story has never had before in all of its tellings over the past 40 years.
Can you tell that story?
I just told you're the first people in public that story's ever been told to. I just gave you breaking news.
I just mean the whole the whole story, not just the extra bit about it.
You'll have to you'll have to wait for diary number 23 to come out for that.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, well, that leads me. So when David Fravor came out, I think in 2019, man, that blew my mind. I couldn't believe there was this guy that had real credentials that was talking about having seen a craft. I didn't believe any of this stuff was even remotely possible. So I went traveling Latin America for like 2 years, just looking. I thought, well, if it's as prevalent as what it must be for this guy to have seen a craft with 4 other people, then I'm gonna find cases if I start traveling Latin America. That's how I had it, like, probabilistically. And I was actually in Brazil right around the time when James Fox released the Varginha case, where
Mhm.
it came down and there was aliens that came out, and I met
There's a there's
someone.
a there's a book coming out on that probably next month. Our director of investigations for what's her name? A woman by the name of Fernanda de Perez. All right, she's a Mufon director, and she just had a book translated on that into English, and they're going to be releasing it this month. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to let you know
Oh
that
no,
there's a
that's
book
great.
coming out on that. Yeah.
Well, I was, as I was traveling around asking people about, like, because I didn't know if it was real or not, or if there were retrieval programs like this or not. I met a woman. She was a news anchor, and she said one of her friends had been driving a taxi in the town. I think it's called Tres Altos or something, real small town up there in Minas Gerais. And he said that day was the first day I'd ever seen Russian people show up. There were Russian men in black suits who wanted taxied from our little airport around the town. We couldn't understand a word that they said, and we didn't know what they were doing, but it happened right after the crash, and all the stuff got gobbled up by the US and the Russians, and then they all left. And I heard a similar story in southern Bolivia, northern Argentina, actually, from a truck driver. So let's go on the premise that there are different races. Where do you stand on which races there are? And maybe, like, what details do you feel kind of firm on or loose on about the different races that could be out there?
Okay. I've seen a lot of reports in my day. All right. I've
I can
probably read
imagine.
10,000 or more easily in the past 3 years. Um, I mean, there's books out, the entity almanacs or whatever that show that there's 500 different types of beings and they come from this star system and that star system. I can tell you from all of the cases I've read, there are primarily 3 types. There are the tall blonde Nordics, there are the little grays, and there are reptilians. That is what I have seen over and over and over again. The most prevalent, the grays. Second most, the tall blonde Nordics. Third, the reptilians. And the reptilians are sort of way down. There's also a scattering of the insectoid types, the praying mantis types, but that's the top 4 that I see. I don't see 500 different, species visiting Earth.
Any personality traits that seem to come along with either the grays? Actually, I've heard there's like 3 different versions of grays and come at different heights. But
There's at least 2 different versions of grays. I know there's the tall one. Okay, so when you get abducted and you wake up and you're on the metal table on this, in this roundish room with diffused whitish bluish light, and there's 3 little grays around you, and then the big guy comes in and he goes face to face with you, and you get this like sexual ejaculation feeling, and everything's happy then, and that's when they start sticking needles in your belly. Okay, so they uh the presentation I gave last night contained a lot about grays. A lot of people describe the grays as soulless. All right, I actually know somebody who used to work for Mufon, who may have been connected to a government agency that said that the Greys are plant-based, genetically modified drones. All right. And I don't know if that's true. You often see the Greys working in conjunction with tall blonde Nordics. A lot of times when there's a phenomenon called the skull drillers, where these tall entities come in, sometimes with a short entity like a gray, and they just start drilling into the back of people's skull behind their left ear. And I have at least a dozen cases of exactly that same thing happening all over the world. But the grays seem to be subservient to the tall blonde Nordics. All right. And think about this. This is my theory. In a lot of the um, tall blonde Nordic cases that you get, they appear to be these benevolent Star Trek types. They're wearing the powder blue, shiny spandex suit like Seven of Nine in Star Trek. They've got some sort of emblem on their, on their chest, usually a geometric design as if they belong to some sort of military unit. And they're always, appearing to be benevolent. But a lot of times the things they do are not benevolent. All right. They're sort of sinister. And think about this: humans, because they are humanoid, humans are apex predators. Any mammal that has its eyes facing forward is a predator. The little grays, their eyes go around the side of their head like a deer, which is like prey. So my personal feeling is that whatever the grays are, they were domesticated by the tall blonde vortex.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never heard that before.
They're like dogs to to us.
They're like dogs. Yes, they'll do
Yeah.
whatever they're told to do.
They're domesticated.
There, I think there's been two ex-defense ministers, one ex-Canadian defense minister, and then the former head of Israeli aerospace defense, I
Yes.
believe, that both came out and said that the United States has, I think they said they have a contract with some government, intergalactic government. Have you ever looked into that or gotten reports?
Well, what the United States government does, if they do have crash debris, for example, uh, they can be subject to a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request. So what they do is they pawn it off to private corporations like Battelle, Bigelow Aerospace, and they're under no compunction to ever tell you anything. I mean, Bigelow just built a massive warehouse out in Las Vegas. He's got black helicopters flying around it to protect it. What's he storing in there? He doesn't have to tell you. The United States government would. So, I do think that there's something going on for sure.
Yeah, Matt and I sold a software company, and in the process, we learned how valuable it is sometimes to set up shell companies and move jurisdictions when you're setting up stuff. It seems it would be so easy in the current like business setup that we have on this earth.
Yeah, the
To hide
ecosystem.
stuff in subcos of
Sure.
subcos of subcos inside a trust inside a subco. It'd be so easy.
Mhm.
That's
So,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I could buy that for sure.
How often do you get contacted by sort of federal agencies to assist with or give input on? How closely tied are you guys with them relationally?
We're not, but
Okay.
we are pretty close to some members in Congress. As a matter of fact, when they had the last set of hearings, my boss went to Washington, our executive director, Dave McDonald, and he brings with him statistics and reports that we feel are, excellent. And I usually write the reports that he takes. And so the last set that I gave him was turned over to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Congressman Tim Burchett. Andre Carson is another one who's a friend of Mufon.
I'm in Vienna, yeah.
And Nancy Mace, Representative Nancy Mace. They're friends of Mufon. They're very, very uptight right now about the military hiding stuff, and that's why they keep having these hearings. And I believe there's going to be another round of hearings this summer, if I'm not mistaken. So they want to get to the bottom of it. Tim Burchett, especially, is like loaded for bear, wanting to go after the military. So
It's so cool to watch.
mhm. But remember this: they've been having hearings for decades, and it's almost like
Right.
they start from scratch every single time. So are they just like pumping us up to let us down, pumping us up to let us down? I don't think disclosure is coming anytime soon. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that they would have. There's not enough upside for like whoever's in control of this. There's no upside in letting the rest of us, semi-developed monkeys know about it. Basically,
In on it. Yeah.
yeah. Like, what are we? We're just gonna create a bunch of political issues about it. We're gonna introduce a bunch of social rights that they don't have to deal with right now. I don't see how it benefits them. What do you think about Elon? I'm so curious. Like, he's starting to get all these defense contracts. Seems like he could easily go down the route of having companies with subcompanies that would get some of this material, especially if he's really got eyes on space with all these satellites.
Elon says that he sees no proof that there's aliens, but he doesn't say anything else about interdimensionals, time travelers, or maybe he does believe in aliens, but he has a vested interest in not telling us. If you want to hear a really, really interesting story about Elon Musk, I'll tell you. All right.
Yeah.
It starts in World War II. All right. We're doing the time travel thing again. Okay. Wernher von Braun, he was the Nazi scientist who developed the V2 rocket. Okay. When the war ended, he came over to the United States under Operation Paperclip with about 200 other Nazi scientists, instead of standing trial and being hung at Nuremberg. So he comes over in Operation Paperclip, and he's working in New Mexico in the 1950s on, Cold War stuff. And while he's there, he writes a novel. Did you ever hear this story?
No,
Mm-mm.
this is great.
He writes a novel called, I think it's called Project Mars, and it's a very technical, dry, boring novel about how the United States would use stepping stones to get to Mars and colonize it. Okay. It's either chapter 28 or 23, he describes, once the United States has colonized Mars, how the government of Mars would operate. And it would be sort of like a Senate and a House of Representatives, like two-chamber government. And the leader, the president, the prime minister, his title would be the Elon, Elon.
Oh,
All right. This book was written in 1952. All right. Fast forward to the 1970s, at the start of Ronald Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, Star Wars. Okay. There were some pretty heavy duty names involved with that, including von Braun right before he died, Oppenheimer. Okay. And at the time, von Braun had a secretary. Her name was Carol Rose. And he told her a couple of interesting things, that uh, there's not aliens. It's all about the weaponization of space. And the way they're going to acclimate the public to it, first there'll be terrorist attacks where we have to develop a sort of a Star Wars system. And then in the future, we'll be worried about an asteroid hitting Earth. So what did NASA just test? A way to deflect asteroids. Okay. It's not about deflecting asteroids. It's about the militarization of space. All right. So just stay with me here. Okay. So they come up with this idea, Oppenheimer and von Braun. It's called Operation Brilliant Pebbles. And if you look in Wikipedia at the diagram of this Operation Brilliant Pebbles satellite, it's an anti-satellite satellite. It kills other satellites, right? It's shaped like a sort of like an oval, and it's got a solar array, almost like Venetian blinds, going straight up from it. So picture something like this with like a long rectangle of solar panels on it. This is in 1980. And also in Wikipedia, you'll see the coverage map of where Brilliant Pebbles was going to be. And basically, it encompasses the entire Earth except the poles. All right. Fast forward ahead to Starlink, Elon Musk's Starlink. All right. If you look at a Starlink satellite, once it's fully deployed, it's an oval with Venetian blinds. It is an exact replica of a satellite killing satellite designed in the 1980s. All right. The Starlink may be for internet, but I also think it's for something else. And in October of last year, Elon Musk entered into a contract with the United States government for what's it called, Star Shield, where he's going to be deploying another network of satellites for the military, like Starlink. If you look at the coverage map for Starlink and Star Shield, it's an exact replica of the coverage map for Operation Brilliant Pebbles. I think that Elon Musk and Wernher von Braun somehow knew each other.
Whoa,
That's incredible.
that
I mean,
is incredible.
I heard Elon say, he was on a podcast or something, and he said there's like 9,000 satellites orbiting Earth, or 10,000, and he said Starlink has half of them. And he's like,
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think everything in the past 5 years that's active in space, 80% is his.
yeah,
All right. He owns space, you know.
Yep. Yep.
what a chess move.
And he owns like battery production, and he owns AI
Oil
production,
companies, yeah, they're
Solar.
chipping ahead.
and he's
They're
working
chipping
on owning
yeah.
media. I mean,
I mean, and plus he's so well liked and just helped Trump get elected, and he's of European descent. He's Dutch, and he fits all the qualifications of the Antichrist. You want to go down that route? All right.
I would love to.
Yeah, we got to see the trajectory of where Elon goes in the next 10 years, because Elon's going to be around long after Trump is gone. Okay.
Seems like
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like
Right.
it. Elon Musk has a gun next to his bed at night. I don't know if you knew that.
I
Yes,
saw that.
I mean, I would if I was
yeah.
him. That's
And,
for sure.
and like 3 empty cans of Diet Coke. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
So Elon might be the Antichrist. That's interesting. I don't want to. One thing I always feel about Elon is like humanity has to have a leader. Somebody's got to be just taking the helm and doing big things.
Mhm.
Whether it's like General MacArthur, Eisenhower,
Right.
Elon, whoever it's going to be. I don't ever want to demonize the person because they're always going to set off at least half the population, because I don't
Yeah.
want to turn them into the villain that we all probably deserve. You know what I mean?
No, I actually like him. I'm just saying that, like,
He's
I've
he's
been
still in the
noticing
good part of his
lately.
story arc. He
Yeah,
hasn't fallen. He hasn't
yeah,
taken the complete
Right.
fall yet.
yeah.
Still building. He's still climbing. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll still be rooting for him till something,
I'll tell
till
you that. Yeah, yep.
till he moves to Mars and threatens to blow up
Right.
Earth if we don't
Or
cooperate.
until they start building the third temple, then we know it's all going down the drain after that. So
Yeah, then the
Start-
time travel stories really work out better.
Or they start giving numbers out and for commerce. You can't buy it without showing your number. We're going in the wrong direction.
Oh yeah. Well, it's so funny that we keep seeming to prove. Like I saw this study that some scientists found that there were time crystals that they could play with, and then Google comes out and basically says that there's a multiverse with this quantum computer. Like it really feels like all the little data that we get from the bottom says that time's not real or time's manipulatable. It's another force, and we just happen to be experiencing it. But for some reason, our brains just can't accept that there's time travel. I don't get the disconnect there.
yeah, I mean, Liz, there's a couple of different things I could say there. Like, let's say somebody prevents 9/11 from happening, then maybe the timeline bifurcates. So there'll always be a timeline where 9/11 happened, and then there's a timeline where it never happened. And this could be going on, for all of eternity. Same thing with humans. When you like go down to the lepton and quark level, all right, we're not even solid. We're not even here. I mean, I don't even know how you explain that. All right.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
Yeah. I wonder if consciousness is a fundamental force, if you do get to kind of choose which bifurcations you're going to take to some degree. Like I went through this, actually. I quit smoking cigarettes like a year ago, and I had to go through this. I was actually thinking about all the timelines. I was like, well, there's probably a timeline where Austin keeps smoking cigarettes. And then I felt like I centered myself, and I said, you know what? I am going to decide as me that there's no timeline where I keep smoking cigarettes. And I was done. And so maybe I cut off some of those timelines. So I'm sorry to any individuals that was trying to live in that timeline that I might have killed. I do feel bad about that.
I stopped smoking in 2008. All right.
All right.
To this day, I still have dreams where I'm smoking, and I say, if only I had quit. All right.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like a recurring dream that I have. So
So I got a question. I have a friend who just quit smoking cigarettes, and she just told me on a run this morning. We run up the castle here in Mexico City every Thursday morning. She told me that she saw a shadow figure last night, and she's like 2 days into quitting smoking. She had sleep paralysis last night, and she saw a shadow figure, which is a common story that I've heard with sleep paralysis, but I never had associated it with quitting
yeah,
smoking.
it's good that you reminded me of that. I told you Nordics first, Gray second, Reptiles third. All right. You've also got shadow people, and you've got hooded figures. Sometimes the hooded figures are shorter, sometimes they're taller, sometimes they're wearing white hoods, sometimes they're wearing black hoods. So that they're not by far as prevalent as the first three. But yeah, shadow people. As a matter of fact, the presentation I gave last night, a kid saw a shadow person in his room in his Mufon case, and he thought it was a dream. He goes out to tell his mother, and his mother says, "What time was that?" And he says, 2 a.m. She goes, "That's exactly when I saw a shadow figure myself." So, when you have two or more witnesses, that lends more credibility to a story that there was actually a shadow person, in the room. So I absolutely believe that shadow people are a thing also.
Yeah, I'm 100% on shadow figures. We'll put that in my dating profile when you get the app ready. But I don't know what they are. I mean, I rarely hear anyone even talk about like what they could be. I think David Icke, I've heard once say that they are like they're the astral body to a bunch of lizard people that are in hibernation in
Yeah.
these tunnels. But he's the only person I've even heard like address like where do shadow figures really come from? Because they seem to exist in like every culture too.
Mhm. Yep, my wife saw shadow figures. My wife's from Indonesia, and there's a lot of spooky stuff goes on in the small villages of Indonesia. But my wife said when she was a kid, she could see the shadow figures going across her room. So I definitely believe her. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think that do you think that these guys are against us, for us, don't care about us? What do you think I mean, it seems like if they wanted to destroy us, we'd already be gone. I mean, it seems like it. So what do you have any idea or any opinion, I guess, on their motives and whether any of them are actually bad?
And are you
Yeah,
talking about shadow people or aliens, Matt?
I think in general, no, I guess
Just like
there's
all these
in
groups.
general, yeah, all these groups, like they all seem like all of them should be more powerful than humanity, and so they could just stomp on us if they wanted to. And so again, I don't know. I haven't thought as much about it. So I was wondering if you had an opinion on sort of what they're doing.
yeah. If you ever go back to, if you're familiar with Charles Fort, he was the Charles Fort. Wrote a book called Book of the Damned, and he was the original investigator of weird stuff. Rains of frogs, rains of blood. He had reports of triangles in 1898, and he published this book in the 1920s. And so, if you ever heard the term Fortean researcher, it's based on his last name. And they're
Okay.
people that they don't only investigate UFOs; they just investigate anything that's strange. Okay, shadow
Okay.
people, that type of thing. And he had a famous quote in his book that said, "We are someone's property." Okay, basically that we're a zoo or a lab, and that we're lab rats. And I believe that to a certain extent. I definitely think what Matt said before. Are they good, bad, or indifferent? I believe it's all three because I don't think it's all one entity. It's different entities with different agendas. I think there's
Okay.
good aliens, bad aliens. There are aliens. If I don't like to call them aliens or any, I call them visitors. All right, because I really don't know where they're coming from. There's one case where a fellow in Italy is on his balcony and he sees two orbs coming at him, and they materialize into two small entities on his balcony in front of him. The one entity turns to the other one and says, "He's sick, heal him." And the next thing he knows, they turn back into balls of light and fly away, and his cancer is gone. Okay. So there are many, many, many stories of aliens curing people, strange people in silver suits in South America, walking into a sick girl's bedroom, touching her in front of the parents, and then walking out. All of these crazy stories where we see healings. Okay. And a lot of experiencers, especially when they come to our symposiums, we have experiencer workshops just for them. They're private. We never filmed that part of the symposium. Okay. They believe a lot of times their experiences are positive. But I'll tell you an experiencer who had a very bad experience, and this is a creepy story. Woman told me a story where when she's old lady now, in the 1960s, she was about 10 years old, and she saw blue and white orbs come into her bedroom. Next thing she knows, she's in a dark place. She's in line with other people ahead of her. There are alien grays on both sides of her, and everyone's walking into a machine. And she sticks her head out to look to see what's on the other side of the machine, and it's piles of flesh, turned up flesh coming out. So these people are walking into a machine and being
Meat grinder.
like a meat grinder, turned into bacon. And she starts screaming, and one of the grays comes over and says, "We can't use her." They touch her, and she's back in her bed. All right. And I'm saying that's a scary story. So, you know, that shows that there's
Mm.
bad aliens. And then there's other ones that seem like they need to experiment on people because they need something. Maybe they're from the future, something went wrong, they're coming back and they're on a mission. They don't want to hurt you, they don't want to help you, they just want your DNA or something. All right. they're very methodical and cold, and they're just doing what they've got to do. So yeah, I definitely think there's different reasons. There's good, bad, and different, sure.
I always wonder, do you think the rules of karma would apply to them? I mean, if there are rules of karma, which a lot of religions and things seem to tout, like there's sort of there's a wave function of the universe at some time, and karma kind of goes up and karma kind of goes down. I wonder if grays are like soulless. I wonder if they even care, if what they do has an impact on their future or.
Right. Well, there's one theory that the Greys, if they are soulless, if we get into religion here for a second, in the Bible, demons don't have bodies. All right, the disembodied angels that got taken down, the Nephilim are basically demons now without a body. That an alien Grey would be a perfect vessel for a demon to enter to do whatever they want. So yeah, does karma apply? Do bad things happen? Yeah. Another interesting thing is when people who are of a Christian persuasion are being abducted and they're very scared and they call out to Jesus. All right. And they wrote a book on this. Boom, it's over. So was it really aliens that were abducting them, or was it something demonic? All right. And the power of spirituality overwhelmed what was about to happen to them. So yeah, that's why Mufon never says it's aliens or demons or whatever. Plus, it could be all A, B, C, all of the above.
Or is it just a password? like in the Old Testament when you had to put the blood above your threshold, I'll pass
Yeah.
over you. And it's just kind of like, hey, do this, and maybe crying out. And maybe it's not the word Jesus. Maybe it is actually, but maybe it's the intent or something. And maybe it's a large number thing. They get 1,000 people, and X% are gonna make this cry out, and they're gone. And sort of like the girl who screamed going into the meat locker, and they're like, "Oh, we can't use you." Like maybe it's actually something helpful, or it's interdimensional. That'd be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'll tell you another interesting story. It's not aliens related, but they did a study. The University of Virginia has a random number generator. All right, and they found out that when it generates random numbers, there are patterns in the random numbers. All right, that come out on 9/11 the following year. Everybody played 9/11 in the New York lottery. All right, in 2002. And that day, 9/11 came out. All right. And everybody won. Uh, the New York Times crossword puzzles, they broke a test group into three groups. People who took the crossword puzzle a week before it was published, people who took the crossword puzzle the day it was published, and then a week after, but people who had never seen it. And what they found was the number of correct answers went up over time, even though none of these three groups ever spoke to each other or saw the test before. And they're saying, was it out there somewhere in the ether, to be picked up like we're antennas? So, I mean, there's so much you could talk about. There's so many ways to go about what's going on around us. I mean, we can only see a certain amount of, light in the spectrum, but the spectrum goes, so far. What's going on all around us that we don't know? What type of forces are out there?
Yeah, and this idea that, I mean, it seems to me it's a fractal universe, like, especially if you read like Benoit Mandelbrot, and he studied for patterns and random stuff. And it feels like there are patterns that make up the whole universe is concocted of these patterns. And we don't know what the pattern is yet, but it feels like if that's true, you would start to see things going from small to larger. And I don't see anywhere in this universe where you can look where there's any sort of carbon or oxygen or anything where life hasn't started sprouting up. I mean, even in the corner of your bathroom, like mold will just start growing out of nowhere. You don't even know where it came from.
In fact, we had a guy, George Howard, on the show, and he talked about how space is littered with living things, and like the building blocks that, like, they're going out to the space station and they're cleaning the outside of the space station, and on the rags is like bacteria, or like some building blocks of bacteria, something that was basically, I guess he said, there's nothing out in space, but it seems that life can survive in some dormant state or something, and it's literally everywhere in space. Like it's just a bunch of dust everywhere. And I thought that was pretty interesting because there's a theory that then it falls to a planet, or it basically seeds a planet, or can, with extra biological life, kind of.
Yeah, that's called the panspermia theory.
Yeah, there it is.
That's
Yeah,
right.
right.
Yeah. So, there's if you ever heard of the term nostoc, it's this jelly-like material that people find in their backyards, and it's also called star jelly. And over the centuries, people equated it with when they see like a meteorite, and then later on there'd be this gelatin type stuff on the ground. And scientists will tell you, oh, it's frog spawn or frog vomit, all right, or something like that. The movie The Blob in the 1950s with Steve McQueen is based on an actual Nostoc incident that happened with two cops in Pennsylvania, where they saw this quivering gelatin stuff right after a meteorite. Um, some people have picked it up, and boom, it ignites and burns them. All right, which may be another theory of what these orbs are. But essentially, for hundreds of years, people have equated it with something falling from the sky. So,
Yeah.
what is this stuff that falls from the sky? All right.
Is that related to black goo? Are you familiar with black goo and maybe I think Falkland
Probably is.
Islands? Okay.
I don't know that story, but I would assume that there's probably a relational, relationship.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that story either very well, so I won't go into it. But it does feel that fact is probably stranger than fiction based on this conversation. That's what I'm coming to understand.
Since you've been doing this for so long, have you seen an increase in the reports, at least of like having video evidence and photo evidence? Because now everybody's carrying around 50 megapixels in their pocket. And
Yes,
yeah,
yes. Yep, yep. We actually had to go to a new server, all right, because years ago people would send us a picture, it was like, a couple of pixels. Now it's like we're getting these high definition movies that just like eat up server space, and it's just a bird flying by very fast that's blurry. But we have to keep it all. We keep it all right. I'd say more than 90% of what we get, video and photographic wise, we can't use, all right, or we can identify it as, people like to take pictures with the sun in it, and then people see this blue orb down here and they go, oh, I saw this blue orb with my own eyes, but they didn't. It's a camera artifact of the sun reflecting inside the lens. Oh, well, it's got little white portholes in it. Well, that's because those are washed out pixels, all right, but it's blue. All right, that's because the lenses of cell phone cameras are coated in sapphire dust to cut down on. And people will still say, no, you don't know what you're talking about. All right, or people are taking a picture, a video of Venus at night, and it's just sparkling and out of focus because the camera's set to infinity. So 99% of the stuff we get, we can't use. However, the 5% that is good is usually really, really compelling stuff.
do you know more about that process? Because sometimes we always keep getting, what's AI, what's real, what's not, and people are like, it is real, it isn't real. What are some of the telling? Do you know the telling characteristics where you go through 3 tests or 5 tests or some series of operations, and you're like, this is legit, like this is,
Yeah.
yeah. What does that look like to actually validate or invalidate a
Yeah,
photo?
we have a 6-man photo analysis team, and these people are good. Like I mentioned before, Mark D'Antonio, he's been on 100 television shows. He's really good. We have uh the former head of cybersecurity at Fermi Labs is on our photo analysis team. So these guys are no slouches, and they use the software, video and photo analysis software that the French Air Force uses. Okay. So they use very, very, very sophisticated software. We can tell hoaxes, you name it. All right. But the interesting thing, there's a fighter pilot photo where he's looking at this thing out of his cockpit. I don't know if you see, it's not the Fravor video. It's a photo, daytime photo through the cockpit. And it's sort of like a round in the front, but it's got serrated edges. It's curved in the back, and it's got a black dot in the middle of it. All right. And this is from 2018 over the Atlantic Ocean. You go back to 1947. All right. There's a photo from, I believe it's Nevada. It's the same exact object 70 years later. that this fighter pilot sees that was photographed in the 1950s. That's where you start to put the pieces together that this phenomenon's been going on for a long, long time. And of course, I said before, we have a really, really exceptional video of a black triangle, and they're very hard to capture. All right. So we're really
That's
looking
coming out
forward.
soon.
That's going to be in July. That's going to be one of the cases of interest that we present. And the fellow Seth Feinstein, who's on our photo analysis team, I will bring him up on stage and he'll go through all of the metrics on how they validated it and proved that it's definitely an anomalous aircraft.
Yeah.
Do people ever ask you if you are an agent?
No, you're the first person that ever asked me that. Actually, no, people don't. I don't come across as a secret agent, man.
That's exactly how I want my agents to be. I think that's why it's a valid question.
Well, I guess I'm gonna have to go find a new line of work now.
Yeah,
Thanks for outing me.
Breaking
fine.
news.
yeah, just go back to HQ. They'll have another assignment for you, Dada. I was the agent here to
So
tell
much,
you that.
so much for being on TV again. That's a,
Yeah. Oh no, they control media. You'll fit right in there. Oh, we did talk to John Kiriakou, an ex-CIA. I don't know if you're familiar with John Kiriakou. He was CIA whistleblower on some stuff back in Iraq and Afghanistan, I think. And he said like the amount of CIA involvement in the media is unbelievable. He's like, you wouldn't believe
Oh,
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Didn't Zuckerberg just came out last week and said, that
Yeah.
the Biden administration basically was shouting at them, censor this COVID stuff. I mean, so yeah, I know the government's not,
Yeah.
What did Ronald Reagan say? The scariest word you can ever hear is "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." It's like,
Oh man.
He had so many good zingers. Oh, well, we're about at an hour and a half. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Bob. This is fantastic.
If you want, I told Matt before I wanted to show you something. The scariest stuff from. Oh yeah, okay. This was case interest last year. All right. I'm gonna share my screen with you guys. I'm glad I remembered to do this. Here you go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so we started seeing reports of people claiming that there were these jellyfish or squid-like objects appearing in their bedrooms. All right, and I chose this picture specifically because a lot of the things that the way they describe these objects is that they sort of had a glow or a bluish bioluminescence to them. All right, and what they were doing was absolutely scary. Uh, This is Mufon case 8022 from Vancouver, Canada. Remember the date, October 24th. Okay. Female witness. All right. She wakes up in the middle of the night. She doesn't even hear her refrigerator or heater. And this is what I was talking about earlier, the Oz effect, where there's absolute silence, almost as if the witness is in a bubble. Okay. She sees this jellyfish thing up near the ceiling, and it looks sort of technological to her. It's got tentacles coming down. All right. And it has what looks like mechanical claws at the end of it. All right. And she hears it get upset telepathically, I'm assuming in English. It was upset that she woke up. And what she realizes is that this tentacle had attached itself to her backside. All right. And then the object just simply disappears. All right. She said it was a dull pale color like metal, and it had tentacle light cords hanging down. And the only way I can picture that in my mind is if you think of a string of Christmas lights, all right, sparkling down. And so is it bioluminescent? Is it a machine? Is it biological? Why is it attaching itself to her back? And she says that it hurt her and that her periods after that became very heavy for a while. All right. So I would think that this is not what you would consider a good encounter. This is something dark. Okay. She drew a picture of it. All right. And this is one of I told you the 13,000 drawings that we have from witnesses. This is one of my favorites. It's so well drawn.
Oh yeah, she's an artist. That's really good.
Imagine that waking up and then seeing that thing above you, and it's attached.
Blue.
It's attached.
It's like
to your
glowing
back.
blue.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
My son would love that as a nightlight, actually.
Yeah, as long as it's not floating and
As long as it's not.
attaching to a spinal cord.
That's right.
All right. Same date, 2 years earlier, October 24th, opposite side of the world, but the same date. All right. Is there something special about October 24th with jellyfish? This is in Iran, 45-year-old woman. The incident is preceded by several poltergeist instances, and she's seeing orbs in the house. At one point, she walks in the kitchen and she sees her dinner in a frying pan, levitating in midair. Her husband comes in, he freaks out, the pan drops to the floor. So they both see it. After that, on October 24th, she felt that something was coming for her. She felt the pressure on her chest. Okay. And she saw it looked like a boxed jellyfish with lots of short legs, half blue and half red on her stomach. Okay. Um, that's pretty. She says it looks like a sea creature. So again, we see, there's this blue aspect to it, and then after a few minutes, it disappears. But while it's on her, it does something to her abdomen, and she was smart enough to take a picture of it. So when you see the photograph of the scar this thing left behind, you will be absolutely convinced that it was doing some sort of surgery on her. I don't have a picture or a drawing from her, but I have another case of a bedroom encounter, and I'm going to use that drawing to show you what I believe she saw.
Okay.
That's the scar that the jellyfish left. All right, that's not a cut, that's a surgical scar. And this is from a case in Bloomfield, Indiana. It was with a 15-year-old Catholic virgin girl who woke up with this thing on her, and she was getting a clear discharge from her vagina, even though she was a virgin. So what was this thing doing to her? And it's almost the exact description of what this lady in Iran was describing. Okay. So what are these things that are in people's bedrooms? And this one is the earliest account that we have. 1937, the Straits Times was the leading paper in Asia in the 1930s. So Zelma Bramley Moore, she was very popular in the 1930s. She wrote books. She was a mystic. She did horoscopes, all right, psychic seances, and she's on vacation. And Zelma wakes up in the middle of the night in this hotel in Singapore, and she says 2 or 3 feet from my face was this floating thing. It was about the size and shape of a rugby football, standing up on end, and it appeared to be made out of some sort of luminous gassy substance which radiated a strong pale blue light. So we keep seeing this bioluminescent type of glow. And where do you see bioluminescence? You see it at the bottom of the sea where it's dark. You see it with lightning bugs when it's dark. Why would these jellyfish be using bioluminescence? Are they from Earth, or are they from another place that's dark? Okay. Anyway, this thing has one long tentacle about the thickness of a thumb coming down out of it. And she says the thing ran to her forehead. It was attached to her forehead. And this is what she says. It was as if my vitality seemed to be flowing into the football-shaped visitor. It was sucking her soul or her life force out of her. Like in the other case, she wakes up, the thing jerks away and disappears. 1937 till what's the first one? 2016. All right. Decades, these jellyfish have been.
And they fly in the air next to, like, near these people, and they're probably not like humming or whirring or making any sort of, it has nothing to do with lift, I'm guessing.
No, and how did
flying?
And how did it get into the bedroom? I mean, possibly the windows were open, maybe not. Did it just materialize from another plane of existence?
Could
So
be a higher
things,
dimensional. Yeah, we should
right.
be seeing a cross section of a higher dimensional being.
So think about this. This is how I always end with the jellyfish presentation. So you heard that Uncle Joe died peacefully in his sleep last night, right? Oh, Uncle Joe died. He was old. He died peacefully. Well, maybe it was a jellyfish sucking his soul out of him. All right, nobody will ever know.
Oh, poor Uncle Joe. Dang, yeah, we need to send some more prayers his way.
So okay, I didn't want to let you go without me showing you the jellyfish stuff because
Oh, that's fantastic.
pretty scary stuff.
Well, I've heard of some even jellyfish type things in the sky. I've heard of some people seeing some very mutating shapes, look like plasma type beings in the sky.
That's
Really
how we
hard to know
found
what to make
these.
of it.
This all came about because of Corbell's video of the jellyfish object over the Iraqi base. So we started going into the Mufon database and typing in keywords jellyfish, squid.
Yeah.
And not only did we find outdoor jellyfish up in the skies, we started finding these indoor ones. That's how we came across this phenomenon.
Oh, that's
And
wild.
it seems like digitizing your whole thing and throwing it into an LLM is going to yield a lot of stuff. You have so much data that hasn't been analyzed. It sounds like from all
Sure, and there's so many other groups and
yeah.
databases around the world. Once AI gets going and you start crunching the numbers and stuff, it's like I'm hoping all of these patterns and hieroglyphics that people write, once they like shoved
Yeah.
it to AI, we're going to find out, is it gibberish or is it a language and is there a message in it? So that's what I look
Yeah.
forward to most of all, is what AI is going to be able to do with all of this stuff.
Oh yeah, especially with quantum computing coming out. I've heard there was a Y-Files episode where he talks about how quantum computers will be able to crack what are they called? The Voynich documents or
I thought that they just cracked that or partially cracked it.
maybe
The
they
code,
did.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned Jeremy Corbell. I kind of want to ask, in the UFO space, there's so many like splinters, it feels like, between groups. Can you give me, I know Jeremy Corbell is famous for bringing the Bob Lazar story back to life and making the documentary. What are your thoughts on Bob Lazar, George Knapp, and Jeremy Corbell?
Um, Lazar, uh, I went back and forth for many years. I tend to believe. Okay. Some of the story doesn't stack up, but that happens a lot of times that there's discrepancies. But I think he saw something, and I think he knows something. I've met Knapp. He was the keynote speaker several years ago at the symposium. He's very serious about it, and I think he knows a lot more than he'll ever tell us because he's friends with Robert Bigelow. All right. And Corbell, I'm on, my personal opinion, I'm on the fence about him. I don't necessarily think that jellyfish video is anything out of the ordinary. I think it may have actually been a humanoid shaped military drone with quadcopter wings. And the reason why it looks like spaghetti is because it's wearing what was called a ghillie suit, which is when
Yeah.
soldiers want to blend in. So I think that there's a plausible explanation for that video. And in my opinion, I think he's trying to capitalize off it, and it's nothing anomalous. So that's my opinion on Corbell.
Okay. Neither of them are agents, I guess. They're just reporters doing their best.
Yeah, like same thing with Greer, Stephen Greer. A lot of people, think that he's just in it for the money. Although, I've seen some of his stuff, and I've looked into some of his witnesses, and some of them are pretty credible. So, there's a lot of people that in ufology you can be on the fence about. All right. Sometimes they come out with something good and say, okay, he's legit. And sometimes they come out with crap and you go, I don't know. All right. So, but Knapp and Lazard, I definitely think know stuff. All right. So
And Greer's promising a big announcement. I mean, he always promises big announcement, it seems like.
it's he promised it for the 13th. Today's the 16th. So I'm still waiting
Yeah.
for his big
Well,
announcement.
he
Yeah.
said before Trump goes into office,
Mhm.
which sounds like a sort of Simpsons type prophecy.
Mhm.
But you don't have any ideas? I mean, I've looked at a lot of his witnesses too, and they seem to be very credible. In
Mhm.
fact, I actually offered to Greer to build. He was talking about he needed to build like a secure database to be able to share his files with Congress
Yes.
members. And I was in touch with his wife, and I offered to build it because Matt and I have done tech companies for ages. That's what we know how to do.
I'll keep you guys in mind for MUFON if we need help like that. That's good background for
Yeah,
us.
I don't know if you can tell, but it's a big interest of ours.
Mhm.
We're quite interested. I mean, I think
Mhm.
anyone that's curious should be wanting to know what's happening in the universe. So,
Mhm.
yeah, keep us in mind.
Yeah.
Well,
Thanks for talking to us. This was
yeah.
I really appreciate it. I love talking about UFOs, and I like bringing information to the public. No matter how strange, sinister, or helpful it might be, I definitely think we're all on a mission. We're all on the same page, and hopefully, in my lifetime, I'll see disclosure. But I'm not optimistic. I'm hoping AI might rush it where they can't stop it, but I'm not optimistic. But I'm sticking to the game because I love it. All right,
You
guys.
feel well. Sorry, one last question. You feel UFOs are a part of your life purpose, or like what do you see as purpose for humans in this existence?
Me personally, or
Yeah, you personally, and how'd you get there?
I'll tell you this. I never felt like I was abducted or whatever. When I was a kid, I had strange dreams. That I could interpret today as possible grays, but I think they were just dreams. But people who are into this are really compelled to keep going. All right. It's almost like an addiction, or we can't stop, or we're driven, or some force is saying, you've got to help expose what it is. And that's the way I feel sometimes. I feel like I've got to do this. I'm retired. I have all the time in the world to do it, but I've been driven to do this since I'm a little kid, and I don't know why exactly. But when I talk to, hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, it's like they'll still express the same sentiments that I do. It's like we're driven.
Yeah, it's authentic. It feels authentic.
So,
That's great.
all right. All right.
Glad you're doing it. Thanks for doing all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too. All right. So,
It's
okay,
really
guys.
nice meeting you, Bob.
It was a pleasure talking to you guys. Hope to see you again.
You can go to Mufon. We'll put the website to Mufon. I mean,
Mufon.com. And if somebody sees something, you just click on the button in the upper right-hand corner, report a UFO or report an abduction or experience, and it goes into our database. Somebody will contact that witness and help them. We even have an experience or resource team. So people who believe they've been abducted and they had a bad experience, we actually have people who can counsel them. Okay, and put them in touch with psychiatrists and stuff like that if need be.
Oh, that's great. And you have a track for people who want to become local researchers and investigators as well?
It's on the same website, mufon.com, and you click join, and then it'll say, do you want to be a field investigator? Do you want to be a member? Okay. I can tell you that being a field investigator for Mufon has been one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my entire life. So I love Yeah.
I can't imagine. It sounds awesome to get an assignment and you're like, oh, you get in your car and you're like, hey, go check out what's going on over here. And you're walking up going, what's going to happen? What an awesome feeling.
And then you break out in the rash because you walked into an electromagnetic residual field and heavy metal dirt.
Oh, man. Oh, stories. That's great.
That's a great spot to wrap.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome. Well,
Thanks so much, Bob. Really appreciate it.
See you later.
All right. See you, everybody.
See you, man.